It was a crisp autumn afternoon when the kids at Westfield High School began to gather near the bleachers for their usual after-school hangout. They were laughing, goofing off, and talking about their weekend plans. Among them were Ethan and Jake, two popular students known for their athleticism and sharp wit. They were used to being the center of attention, always the ones who made others laugh often at someone else's expense. But today, they were about to learn that not everyone was a joke. Across the field, sitting alone near the back of the bleachers, was an older man, his hair graying and his posture slightly hunched. He wore a faded jacket with a worn-out hat that had a small insignia on it, one that looked like it had seen better days. This was Sergeant Mike Thompson, a man whose life had been shaped by years of service in the military. The world had given him his share of scars, both visible and invisible. His leg, a reminder of an IED explosion in Afghanistan, was prosthetic. He had long since learned to navigate the world with it, but it was still an object of curiosity for those who didn't understand its significance. Today, he was back in town, paying a visit to his old alma mater to meet with some veterans' charity leaders. Ethan and Jake, noticing the older man, exchanged looks. They'd heard whispers that he was a veteran, but to them, he was just another old guy. A soft chuckle passed between them as they began to make their way over. At first, they were subtle, mocking the way Sergeant Thompson had trouble balancing as he stood up to leave. But it didn't take long before their jokes became more cruel. "Hey, you lost your way to the nursing home, Grandpa?" Jake shouted, grinning. Ethan joined in, "Or maybe your leg got tired of carrying your deadweight." They laughed, but what they didn't realize was that their words were not just meaningless insults, they were deeply hurtful. Mike's eyes flickered for a moment, but instead of anger, there was something else, the calm of a man who had seen far worse. The two boys expected him to snap, to get angry, to tell them off. But Mike didn't. Instead, he slowly turned, smiled, and said, "You two remind me of my younger self." Ethan and Jake were momentarily taken aback. The older man wasn't fighting back. "I used to be just like you, full of jokes, thinking the world was mine to make fun of. It wasn't until later that I learned some lessons the hard way." The boys laughed nervously. They had expected a quick confrontation, but this was different. For a moment, it felt like they had touched something real. Something they weren't prepared for. But then, Ethan nudged Jake, and they resumed their taunts. "Oh yeah?" Jake smirked. "What do you mean? You get your leg blown off and now you want to lecture us?" The tension thickened, and Mike took a deep breath, as if weighing something heavy. "It's not about the leg," he said slowly, his voice steady. "It's about the cost of what I gave up for this country. What I gave up for people like you." The words hung in the air. Ethan and Jake paused, unsure of how to respond. But just as the moment was about to grow awkward, an unexpected sound echoed across the field, the unmistakable roar of an engine. Everyone turned to see a sleek black motorcycle pulling up to the school gates. The rider, a tall man wearing dark sunglasses, dismounted with an air of authority. He removed his helmet and walked toward the bleachers, every step deliberate. His presence was commanding. Sergeant Thompson's face softened at the sight of the newcomer. "Well, looks like I'm not the only one who knows how to make an entrance," he muttered under his breath. The newcomer stopped beside Mike. His face was scarred in ways that told stories, but there was no mistaking his air of quiet strength. He shook Mike's hand, and then addressed the crowd with a clear, powerful voice. "Ethan, Jake," he said, his eyes locking with theirs, "I'm sure you've heard of me, Corporal Daniels. You think that leg is the only thing a veteran carries? You're mistaken. We carry pride, sacrifice, and the weight of every life we were able to protect. And believe me, you're lucky to be in this field instead of on it." Ethan and Jake were taken aback. They had heard whispers of Corporal Daniels before, a hero who had served alongside Mike Thompson. But they didn't expect him to show up here. They stammered, realizing that their words had gone too far. The motorcycle, the scars, the uniform, everything clicked. But Mike wasn't done. "You want to know the real cost of war?" he asked, now standing with a sense of purpose. "It's not just the legs or the scars. It's the moments you miss with your family, the time lost to things you can never get back. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for my body to be broken. But I did ask for respect. And when I didn't get it, I learned to stand tall anyway. The words hit harder than anything Ethan or Jake could say in return. The crowd, now gathered around, was silent. For the first time, the boys realized they were the ones who had underestimated someone. They had thought of Sergeant Mike Thompson as an easy target, someone who could be laughed at. But he wasn't just a soldier with a prosthetic leg. He was a man who had lived through more than they could imagine. With a quiet chuckle, Corporal Daniels clapped Mike on the back and said, "All right, Mike. Let's go grab some coffee. These boys have some thinking to do." As they walked away, Ethan and Jake stood frozen. The crowd around them slowly began to disperse, but the lesson remained. The bullying, the mocking, the arrogance had all faded in the presence of a true hero. In the days that followed, Ethan and Jake apologized to Sergeant Mike Thompson, but the damage was already done. They had seen firsthand what happens when you disrespect someone who has given everything. They learned the hard way that veterans like Mike Thompson didn't need to prove their worth. They were already more than anyone could imagine. The true cost of freedom wasn't just what it took from the soldiers who served. It was what they gave to others, including the lessons they taught in the quiet moments, when people thought no one was watching. And in that, Mike Thompson had won, not just a battle for respect, but for understanding. So the next time you find yourself laughing at someone or making fun of them, remember this: sometimes, the people you mock are the ones who have fought the hardest battles. And sometimes, the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected places.